Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Tonight, we are going to be discussing the Republican presidential primary debate number 4, and we're going to be doing, by extension, talking about the race as a whole, just where it's at, what it's going to look like, and just do some more analysis, questions, and answers. This is a live show. This is going to be a very interactive show, so feel free to comment in the comment section. And if you are a paying supporter of Evangelical Dark Web, we do have a call-in link in the description below, and you can hop on the show if you want and give your take. You just got to, follow the rules that we have spelled out, and that's all it takes. So with that said, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you want to support us, evangelicaldarkweb.org/join is where you can go to do that. So without further ado, how are you doing today?
All is good.
All is good.
Been working on some big stuff.
I take it you did watch the debate last night?
Yes, I was watching it while writing the Thomas Massey article.
Now, that article, as soon as I saw that Breitbart ran basically an attack article against Thomas Massey, I'm like, okay, we're running this article today, and meaning Thursday, and it's actually doing pretty well. All things considered, like usually sometimes it was like the junior article to the senior article is kind of how I frame it in my mind, but it's performing about the same. So I think it'll probably do pretty well.
And naturally, writing that article while listening to a debate did affect my mood.
What, red pilling or something, or just Nikki Haley or something?
I mean, when the first hour was speaking about Israel and just
it wasn't
a lot of
fair enough. They spent a lot less time talking about Israel in this debate than the previous debate.
Fair enough, but still, while I'm in the heat of writing the article on Thomas Massey taking shots at the most powerful lobbying interest in Washington, and then you're seeing the presidential candidates groveling. At the same time, it's just compounding everything. It's just like, ugh, it's disgusting.
Yeah, where's the Christian lobby that is as powerful as that lobby? So it looks, what are the 3 provinces? I'm seeing that chat come in, and yes, they're not technically called provinces in that area. They're called
Donbass is one, right?
Oh, Donbass is one. Luhansk is another. Now, I don't know which. I think Vivek's question was to just name 3. If you can name 3, not that there's only 3, because I'm like, man, if there's only 3, is he talking about Kharkiv? Is he talking about Kherson? Is he talking about Zaporizhia? Like, which 3 is he? Which 3 does he want? Because Donbass and Luhansk are clearly 2 of that 3. Crimea is not. And I guess we're going to talk about that answer later. But yeah, it was a bad night for Nikki Haley. Ouch, town population, her bro. And I was kind of expecting it. Like, to me, I wanted to see Ron DeSantis pimp slap her, and that is exactly what happened last night. Now, he wasn't alone in doing that. Like, Vivek was obviously doing it as well.
Well, the tag teams were the same as the prior debate.
Yeah.
That dynamic was entirely carried over.
Yes.
I mean, apart from a couple subtle jabs from Vivek towards DeSantis, which were more or less obligatory.
Yeah, it was obligatory, like you said, and otherwise pretty tame. But, he's like, I'd go one step further than DeSantis on a policy thing. So it was one instance like that. I don't think.
Well, he called them bootlickers. He did call.
Yeah, he did say he bootleg Trump, which is ironic coming from Vivek, because he has been bootlicking Trump for like 6 months now. Even though his campaign didn't start out like that, then it became like that. But last night, that's not exactly what you saw out of Vivek. I actually thought he did really well last night.
I mean, to me, he's the winner.
That was his
of
best
the debate. He was the winner of the debate. He did the best. He spoke my love languages with many of his talking points. And, even if he's not genuine, he at least is speaking to the heart.
There are some ways in which I do think he did extremely well. I mean, but on certain issues, he just doesn't have it as much. I think the immigration issue, I thought Ron DeSantis actually talking about limited legal immigration. Whoa, you don't hear Republicans talk about that. And then on the transgenderism issue, Ron DeSantis is clearly the boss on that issue.
I mean, he had
And
basically a
Vivek
good.
is at best the junior on that issue.
I mean, he had the law. I
But
presume the
I
loudest
know what
applause
you're
on.
talking about. We do have that clip lined up for everyone in the audience.
I mean, there's multiple amendments, but yes.
But I did think that was Vivek's best debate, and I think it was his best debate because Vivek, I think, is more of an entertainer. And that was Megyn Kelly wanted to be she wanted an entertaining debate, and that's what she set out to do, and that's what she did.
And the other thing is, I think DeSantis got a little bogged down. Obviously, he had Chris. I mean, he couldn't slap down Chris Christie enough or shut him up enough. So I think that's part of it's kind of like a comedian with a funny comedian with a heckler just constantly going at him, and he's not able to just put it to rest. So I think that did take away from DeSantis's performance. So I do think from a performance standpoint, DeSantis did not do as well as he should have.
I'm gonna showcase a tweet here, and that has to do with some polls. Because let's actually talk about Chris Christie for a second, if I can find it. Because
come on, you can't miss him.
Yeah, he's hard to miss, and he made a self-effacing fat joke last night, and I thought that was hilarious. But man, I can't. Okay, so it is from Jordan Schachtel, and it's this tweet right here. So Jordan Schachtel tweeted out, "Election polls are a pay-to-play joke right now." Well, zoom in even more here. Why was Christie so confident that he would make it on the debate stage, despite polling at best half the percentage needed? So the percentage threshold he needed was 6%. Looks like someone connected to his campaign paid their way to the fourth debate should the GOP allow it. So in it, we have an article from The Hill, December 1st. Christie confident he will be on the debate stage. And then the fourth debate rules. So 6%, like I said. And then here is the RCP polling average. And you see that Chris Christie has not registered 6% in any of the polls that would be included in the running average. In fact, he just randomly doubled his support between the News Nation poll, News Nation being the host of the debate, and now with the Trafalgar poll. And then the INI tip poll, he was at 1%. So that was the prior poll. But somehow he got up to 6% conveniently for the debate. My thoughts on the tinfoil hat, what do you think?
I mean, I think the RNC probably wanted Chris Christie in that debate, regardless of the rules. So I don't think there's a scenario where they would have kept him off.
I mean, I think the scenario that they don't keep him off is if that poll doesn't get published, they keep him off. So are you saying it wasn't Christie that did it, or
I mean, it could be
else?
a combination of factors, but I do think they wanted him as the fourth man to lob a bunch of grenades at Trump because the RNC wants that.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to put on my conspiracy hat on Jordan and agree with Jordan Schachtel's tweet here. I mean, no reason to really say that it's fake news or anything.
Because if News Nation is paying to host this debate, because I think
why would they sell it for free?
On the street was it was $4 million for the rights. So if they're doing
that, what Glenn Beck said?
Yes, Glenn Beck said that.
And $4 million.
Yes, or that was the bidding price. So if there's a price to host the debate, then there's every incentive in the world to make it a little bit more lucrative on the partners' part. So I don't doubt that they're going to continue to allow Christie on the stage at the very least
Okay,
because of ratings.
follow up on that. You said News Nation paid $4 million for this debate. With that said, which isn't necessarily a profitable deal given ad rates, but Amazon's willing to lose money on everything and still have football. YouTube's losing money to get the NFL Sunday ticket, and they charge $150 more for that than DirecTV did. So who knows whether they're willing to subsidize a loss, but so good on the
Well,
RNC for commanding that.
I don't know
But
who owns
News
News Nation.
Nation did a poll that found Chris Christie at 3%. You think if they wanted Chris Christie in there for ratings, they would have just bumped him up to 6? I mean, and fudge that number. I don't know if it's really a television ratings thing, because they had their opportunity to do that and just didn't. So I'll let you have the last word on this, and then we'll talk
It's
Megyn
fair.
Kelly.
It's fair enough. I mean, obviously, there's still plenty of time to, fudge the numbers. But yeah, I mean, I even if he was like 4%, I still think they probably would have bent the rules.
No, I don't think they would have, because they don't want to bend the rules for 2%, 3%.
Or they
1%.
might have. I don't know if he's polling well in New Hampshire or not, though, because I think Christie's entire plan is bet on New Hampshire. So
I think his entire plan is to, just stay healthy enough to be able to get out of bed on your own. But with that said, next subject I want to talk about is Megyn Kelly. Now, Megyn Kelly said that she was praying that Chris Christie would qualify for the debate so she could roast him with that transgender, that grooming question that she laid on him, which I thought was hilarious. But she wanted a different debate than what we'd previously seen from in 2 other debates, and that we certainly got. We got a much different debate. We've in fact got a debate that was much more reminiscent of the presidential primary debates from 2016. Am I wrong on that? Is my memory bad? 8
no, I
years is a
thought.
long time,
I mean,
or
I don't.
2012 even.
I mean, Megyn Kelly's always asked very poignant, very targeted questions. Like she did that in 2016. Again, I didn't think the question against Trump was
The
unfair
Rosie
or out of
O'Donnell
bounds.
question, right?
Like I don't think
That
it
was the
would have been that
question.
one. Something about mistreatment of
That was
women,
the
and
Rosie
Trump goes,
O'Donnell. Or
like,
yeah,
Rosie.
Rosie. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I thought that was a good
I don't think it
question at the
was
time.
like I didn't. Yeah, but obviously, I think she kind of lost it after that, and she did good this time. I mean, I don't
Keep in
quite.
mind, she also asked John Kasich about him attending a gay wedding.
Yeah, and John Kasich pretty
Remember
much
that?
went pro homo,
Yeah.
and so
And
she's always had that in her, and she is talented. Obviously, she's doing well on the podcast ratings, and
she
has
is the most prominent woman in conservative Inc. And she doesn't even self-identify as a conservative, to my knowledge. She just says she's center right or something, but she doesn't view herself as a conservative. She views herself as someone who understands all sides, I would say. But, I knew she would ask questions like this. And I'm leaving the polling thing up on the left because she does believe the polls are, accurate and faithful and good faith attempts at trying to take a temperature of the room. She does believe that. And I think that's the flaw in her analysis of this presidential election. And you saw that in DeSantis's first question. Because again, Chris Christie at 6% just randomly jumps. I think that's a little shady. I think a lot of this is shady. The term psyop gets thrown around, probably not enough. Candace Owens only recently. Candace Owens would be number 2, I think, in
no. We
terms
don't
of
want to say
prominent women in conservative
we
Inc. The
don't
podcast ratings don't lie.
we don't
Megyn
want to say
Kelly's
Brett
number
Cooper.
1.
We don't want to say Brett Cooper in Simp Culture.
No, Brett Cooper's not.
She gets her she'll get 500,000 views for.
I don't even actually. I know why, because
Well, Simp
people that
Culture.
want to be attracted to Bren Shapiro, but in a woman form, so they don't feel gay about themselves. I think that's the logic, but
I mean, she's attractive. I'll admit it. I'm not
she has
homo.
a big nose, but a beautiful big nose. If you're into that. So anyway, Megyn Kelly, I think overall did a great job.
Now, I will say that I don't think they monitored. They allowed probably too much interference or
She
interruption
said
at the
she wanted
beginning.
that. She
But I
said up
mean,
front, I was going to let the debate happen the two between the two candidates, let them hash it out
I think
because
it was a
she
little too
believes that was the
much.
purpose of the debate.
I mean, I thought it was a little too much. And obviously, maybe that's just because Christie was very obnoxious and, again, did not belong on that stage. So the
Yeah.
guy that doesn't belong being very obnoxious is very, I guess, unpleasant to the ears and the viewing experience. But I understand, like, there's a saying in sports that's incorrect where, a penalty in the first quarter is the same as at the end of the game, when that's just not true. It's actually the opposite. Like, you set the tone in the first quarter, period, whatever the interval is. And then at the end, you kind of want to be hands off towards the end. And
Yeah, I mean, that might be the only reason you won the NCAA bracket that one year with the double dribble and in the game against Auburn
well, I was
in the
still the
Final
winner.
Four.
Still the winner.
I mean, well, anyway, but hurt aside, Elon Musk tweeted that her campaign is dead, referring to Nikki Haley. So Elon Musk is a very good barometer for normies. I don't think and who knows, maybe, yeah, and this is where let's talk about Babylon Bee for a second. They missed their moment to really do a serious gospel presentation to Elon Musk. Because think of Elon Musk as Genghis Khan, right? Instead of Genghis Khan, it's Genghis Chad, maybe. But Elon Musk, think of him like Genghis Khan. The Muslims got to him first, and he converted to Islam. Theoretically, if Christianity got there first, wow, how much different would history be? But it didn't turn out that way. And I think it is for lack of effort, at least in part, on the church. They got there too late. So Elon Musk
Should have been man of the
would
year.
he be a great asset for the church if
Should have been. Should
had
have
a
been.
Constantine moment where he converted?
Should have been man of the year, except it was Taylor Swift
You're right. He should have been man of the year.
or Putin for sealing the deal in Ukraine. But those
Sealing
two.
sealing the deal. According to Nikki Haley, Hamas attacked Israel to help out Iran, who is helping out Russia, and they attack because of that. And which is ironic because wasn't Hamas fighting with weapons that they got from the Ukrainians? They were using American weapons. Well, how'd they get those?
I mean, it's
So
certainly,
the answer is either CIA directly or indirectly, but still CIA or Ukraine. Which one is it?
yes.
Both those answers are bad. Like, how does ISIS have all these weapons and how do they have such excellent coordination? CIA. But and that's what the whole Benghazi thing was about. If you remember that from 2012, where the ambassador died, and what was going on was they were taking weapons from the Libyan rebels that they armed, and they wanted to send them to Syria. Well, who were the Syrian rebels in Syria? The Islamic State. So they were the main rebel group, them and the Nusra Front, which both of those are recognized as terrorist groups, but those were the only rebel groups in Syria that had any real legitimate claim to rebellion or legitimate movement, I should say, critical mass, land holdings. So, with that said, Elon's a good barometer for the normies, and I do believe that these are going to be in chronological order. So this was the question that Nikki Haley opened up with.
That voters
Sorry, not Nikki Haley, that Megyn Kelly opened up with DeSantis on.
And the audio in this is bad because they didn't do proper sound
Yeah,
checks.
they didn't do a sound check on him, so it's like, whoa.
telling you, not no, but not now.
So we have a great idea in America that the voters actually make these decisions, not pundits or pollsters. I'm sick of hearing about these polls because I remember those polls in November of 2022. They said there was going to be a big red wave. It was going to be monumental, and that crashed and burned. The one place it didn't crash and burn was in the state of Florida. They weren't predicting that I would win the way I did, and I won the greatest Republican victory in the history of the state of Florida. I'm looking forward to Iowa and New Hampshire. The voters are going to be able to speak, and we're going to earn this nomination. And here's what we need. I am sick of Republicans who are not willing to stand up and fight back against what the left is doing to this country. You've got to be willing to stand strong, and you've got to be willing to beat these people. I'm the only one running for president that has beaten these people on issue after issue. We beat the teachers' unions when we did school choice. We beat Fauci on COVID. We beat George Soros when we need for this country. And you have other candidates up here like Nikki Haley. She caves anytime the left comes after her, anytime the media comes after her. I did a bill in Florida to stop the gender mutilation of minors. It's child abuse and it's wrong. She opposes that bill. She thinks it's fine and the law shouldn't get involved with it. If you're not willing to stand up for the kids, if you're not willing to stand up and say that it is wrong to mutilate these kids, then you're not going to fight for the people back home. I will fight for you and I will win for you.
So that was the opening salvo by Ron DeSantis, and he came out the gate going after Nikki Haley. I thought that was a very good move. I thought that's exactly what he needed to do. He needed to pimp slap Nikki Haley, treat her like you would Gavin Newsom, because frankly, they are the same. Or I mean, she's just as bad, if not worse, because she wears your jersey.
The only icing on the cake he should have added was a jab about Disney and Nikki Haley's support of Disney. That's the only thing he could have added that would have been like a quick, if you wanted to throw a little torn on that. If you wanted to throw another punch in your combo, that would have been.
I'm a little torn on that because him going after Disney was not the most popular move in Republican politics because of how we need to worship corporate America a lot of Republicans are. But I mean, I think people know, let the record stand for itself. Like that might not, because his goal is to take away the Marco Rubio Republican that would be supporting Nikki Haley, because Nikki Haley is probably going to have the coalition that hates Republicans. Like whoever's supporting Chris Christie in this primary is eventually going to support Nikki Haley because they are a tag team on the stage. And then Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy are effectively a separate tag team on the stage. So we basically have two tag teams, the conservative on the right and then the liberals on the left. Man, is that a coincidence? But that's the tag teams that you see right here on the stage. So I thought that was a very good opening statement. You get 90 seconds to answer a question. So he answered the question and then made the points that he wanted to make, which included going right after Nikki Haley from the start. And then she got bogged down with the issue of her, war against the Anons. And as you know, we are friends of the Anons here on Evangelical Dark Web. A lot of people think that the Evangelical Dark Web Twitter account is anonymous. It's not, technically speaking, but we love Anons here. And just wanted to say that. So we don't have that clip lined up, I don't think, on the anonymous thing. But her and Vivek and DeSantis tag team her on the anonymous social media users. So you ready to move on to this next clip then?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, so
Billionaire investors are reportedly ready to support lucrative corporate speeches and board memberships like you had with Boeing. Weeks ago, you met with Wall Street heavyweights, including leaders from JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and BlackRock. Several other billionaire investors are reportedly ready to endorse you, or recently have, all of which comes with expectations. Aren't you too tight with the banks and the billionaires to win over the GOP's working class base, which mostly wants to break the system, not elect someone beholden to it?
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. First I'll tell you, just to respond to Ron, he continues to lie about my record. I actually said his Don't Say Gay bill didn't go far enough because it only talked about gender until the 3rd grade. And I said it shouldn't be done at all, that's for parents to talk about. It shouldn't be talked about with schools. In reference to donors coming on board, look, we will take support from anybody we can take support from. But I have been a conservative fighter all my life. I was a Tea Party candidate when I became governor. We opposed every single corporate bailout we possibly could. We passed tort reform. We passed one of the toughest illegal immigration laws in the country. We passed pro-life bills. We moved in unemployment from 11% to 3%. We took on the unions, and we took on Obama when it came to the unions, the Syrian refugees, and everything in between. And so I've had a fight. And so as much as Ron says that's not true. But when it comes to these corporate people that want to suddenly support us, we'll take it. But I don't ask them what their policies are. They ask me what my policies are. And I tell them what it is. Sometimes they agree with me, sometimes they don't. Some don't like how tough I am on China. Some don't like the fact that I've signed pro-life bills. Some don't like the fact that I may oppose corporate bailouts. That doesn't matter. That's who I am. And that's why the most conservative grassroots group in the country, Americans for Prosperity, endorsed me last week.
That is not the most conservative group in the country. That part's entirely fake news.
And let's just say that is a good opening question of asking whether she would be beholden to special interests, especially the week of the Koch brothers.
Boeing.
Well, one of the remaining Koch brother endorsing her.
I mean, she takes money from she's been on the board of one of the 5 families of defense contracting.
Yeah, and Boeing, and she left after they had the worst decline in their stock, and I suffered major losses during her tenure on the board.
Yeah.
So I remember. My wallet remembers.
So she was super qualified at that. I'm very sure. So, again, I liked Megyn Kelly's question. I don't think she really sold that she's not beholden to the corporate interests when you tout the exact policies that defense contractors want, like more war in Ukraine that America should be funding. You don't really win that. You can't win it when that's your position. Now, Vivek,
Accused Ron DeSantis of wearing high heels.
So this is Vivek's opening statement, and we're not going to replay every single clip from every single candidate, but the opening statements I think are very important, except for Chris Christie's. His opening statement came like 20 minutes into the debate or something. He kept having a watch on him when he spoke. I thought that was pretty funny.
Accused Ron DeSantis of wearing high heels and told Ambassador Haley she should keep a closer eye on her daughter. Can you see how this has led some to conclude you are not, in fact, a unifier, and to question your authenticity?
Megyn, I think there's a time and place for everything. We need somebody in the White House who absolutely is going to be a fighter when it counts. And I did say that there were some good people on that stage in that 3rd debate. Doug Burgum was on that stage at that time. And I'll say that jokingly. Ron DeSantis is a good person, too. I want to go back, though, to Nikki Haley's comment from earlier that she is somehow not responding to the will of these donors.
Can I just pause? Like, what did he mean by Doug Burgum was on the stage at that time?
Was he not on the third? He wasn't on the 3rd debate.
No, he wasn't on the 3rd debate.
Maybe he's just misremembering.
Maybe I was confused by that at the time.
Or no, he might be confusing Doug Burgum with Tim Scott, because Tim Scott was the odd man out in the last debate.
Oh, because Tim Scott and Doug Burgum totally look alike because there's so many.
They actually do. I've confused the two of them before, right?
Really? How?
I don't know.
Now, Tim Scott at least knows what a woman is.
Yeah.
And I would say Doug Burgum also knows what a woman is, but I don't really consider him in the race.
No, but
they
were both so unmemorable
that he doesn't remember.
Yeah. It was Doug Burgum, or it was Tim Scott, not Doug Burgum. So,
Nikki, you were bankrupt when you left the UN. After you left the UN, you became a military contractor. You actually started joining service on the board of Boeing, whose back you scratched for a very long time, and then gave foreign multinational speeches like Hillary Clinton is. And now you're a multimillionaire. That math does not add up. It adds up to the fact that you are corrupt. And when I said they were bought and paid for, I meant the Republican establishment. not the Democratic establishment. Now you have Reid Hoffman, the person who's effectively George Soros Jr., funding lawsuits across this country against Donald Trump to keep him off the ballot, funding left-wing causes. We discovered this week that he is one of Nikki Haley's largest supporters. Larry Fink, the king of the woke industrial complex, the ESG movement, the CEO of BlackRock, the most powerful company in the world, now supporting Nikki Haley. And to say that doesn't affect her is false, because it's after that meeting later that day that she says that every American needs to be doxxed by having their ID, their government-issued ID, tied to what they say on the internet. So I think that this is far more corrupt than I even imagined when I entered politics. But I will say this. It is going to take a leader from the outside, with fresh legs, from the next generation to unite this country. Not the broken politicians who are puppets of the puppet masters, but the actual people in this country. Thomas Jefferson was 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. I think it's going to take somebody whose best days in life are still ahead to see a country whose best days are ahead of itself. And I think I can reach that next generation better than anybody else in this race.
Thank you. Response.
Megan.
Okay, we don't have her response in the clip. But man, is there so much that I want to talk about with that clip.
This is why I loved Vivek's performance. And again, I'm a harsh critic of Vivek. His corporate past and his foray into biotech is beyond corrupt.
Vivek doesn't even pass a 2-year background check.
Yeah.
Just going back 2 years, like this guy, like, come on, what does he really believe?
But wow, the opening salvo.
Yeah, let's actually talk about the Trump age thing that Ron DeSantis was asked about in this, because I think this is the time to have that much broader conversation. Because what he said about the end, that, you know, you need a younger generation to lead. You think about the best leaders in world history, right? So you got Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great. He might not be the best, but in terms of like conquerors, yes, absolutely. Napoleon, who I believe was, is the age that Joaquin Phoenix is when he died. So otherwise he did a lot when he was much younger. And I'm trying to think, and he basically saved France from the guillotine and the French Revolution. So anyone else I'm leaving out? I don't know the ages of Alfred the Great.
Alexander the Great was young.
Constantine was probably young. And then who else am I missing? But there's a lot of great world leaders that were not 80 years old. So when DeSantis was later asked about, do you think Trump is mentally competent enough to be president? It's like, that's really the wrong question to be asking. Like, is he the most optimal self that he is? The answer is clearly no.
I think that's where he struggled. And obviously he couldn't just shut down. He failed to shut down Christie on that moment. So you absolutely handled Gavin Newsom, and you can't handle Chris Christie.
Chris Christie might. I didn't. That debate didn't exist until after this live stream last week ended. So that's where I'm at on that, because it was happening at the same time. But I didn't think that was the worst, because at the end of the day, what is the overarching issue? Is it that he would be declared mentally incompetent, or is that, and is that a question of right now, or is that a question of, January 2025? Is that a question of January 2027 or January 2029? Like what?
And I think that's what you have to articulate. I think
he did articulate that.
I don't think he did it well enough, or
maybe not well enough, but
he could say, for now, he could probably have started off by saying yes, answer the question, a closed-ended question, yes, and then explain. But I think he's lost a little bit off his fastball, and we don't know how much decline is going to happen in 4 years. I think he has to answer the closed-ended question, yes or no. And again, he did this on the foreign policy stuff. So this was a pattern of DeSantis not wanting to answer yes or no on a closed question before going into the rest of his answer. in his explanation. So I think that's what I did not like about DeSantis's performance.
I see what you're saying. I mean, Chris Christie was definitely one to call him out on that, but I don't think he'd be called out on that in the next debate because Chris Christie's not going to get 10%. And CNN has already said that they're not taking Rasmussen, and then Trafalgar. They're not taking those pollsters, which, Trafalgar used to be really reliable, but they haven't been reliable lately. That's for sure. So they were really good in 2018. So, and I think that's right. DeSantis doesn't want to offend MAGA, and
that's why you answered yes before doing the rest of your explanation and saying, but I do think he's lost a few.
It's like, yes, but this isn't a matter of could he pass a test. This is a matter of is he, optimal condition and mental faculties. And the answer is clearly not. Like Trump is having Joe Biden type of gaffes now, maybe not the same level of gaff. Like he hasn't said put y'all back in chains yet. Oh wait, that was before. That was when Joe Biden was just being Joe Biden. Like that was before Joe Biden's mental decline. He was saying that, but it was before corn. He's not saying corn pop, right? And hairy legs that the children like to play with at the pool.
Or black people as a monolith, unlike Hispanics.
And Trump is kind of saying that though. But yeah, he's very proud of the Black Lives Matter support that he's getting. But I never actually remember like during the 2016 campaign, like when David Duke or some sort of KKK leader wanted to do that, endorse, and they made a big fuss out of Trump not disavowing enough that type of support. But DeSantis has to be able to court, the Nikki Haley, Rubio support, and then also the MAGA base. That is a tough needle to thread. And I think the way that he threads that needle is pimp slapping Nikki Haley. He needs to be the alpha in the room, pimp slap Nikki Haley. And that is his way of threading that needle, in my opinion.
I still think you need to be able to emasculate Chris Christie.
Yeah, I see that. I see that.
And again, that's something. If assuming he qualifies for the next debate, he will have to like learn because Chris Christie's just going to be lobbing grenade after grenade at him.
Yeah, because he's going to try to do to DeSantis what he did to Marco Rubio in 2016 in the New Hampshire debate. I don't think was it New Hampshire or was it before that? But either way, it's not. I don't think it's going to work. And they got into like a legal debate, like they're both lawyers, and they got into that legal debate about, he'd be struck as non-responsive. Like, yeah, I don't think it would either. But because, again, what is the real question at hand? Is an 80-year-old going to be a great leader for the country? And I don't think, like, what 80-year-old are you going to say yes about that with?
I mean, generally, when you say we're going to,
you're making an exception when you say yes about that with Trump.
Yeah, anytime you say, hey, we're going to elect an 80-year-old to be the leader, or the king is 80 years old, you're already thinking who's next in line for the throne.
Not only that, but you're also treating it like
true.
a boy. Like, there's two types of kings that are automatically seen as super weak. David, I'll get to that in a second. The super old and the super young. So a boy king is naturally a sign of weakness for a nation. Because, is he strong enough to defend the country? An old king, you look at the story of David in the Bible. When he was super old, who was actually running the kingdom? It was Joab. Now, was Joab a good guy?
I mean, he was whacked on his way out.
No, he was whacked by Solomon.
Well, yeah, he was whacked during the transition.
Yes, so Solomon takes over and he cleans up some, dissidents, and Joab is chief among the dissidents because Joab was effectively running the kingdom while David was weak,
or one of the other sons, or perhaps in collusion with them.
Who was the king? Sons. Who was the other son? That wasn't there a civil war after that?
Yes,
there was a civil war in which Solomon had to ascend to the throne, I believe. But And then Joab was on the wrong side of that civil war power struggle after being on the correct side of the Absalom issue. So, and David wanted to replace him as general, but he murdered and stuff like that. So Joab was not exactly a good dude, but if you want to, make a TV show about that time, Joab would be an excellent character. If you wanted to, not make The Chosen, but make a drama series of the Old Testament, Joab would be a very good character because he's interesting. But he was ruling because David was weak, and he was so weak that they wanted to give him a bed warmer that he refused to sleep with. So that was a sign of weakness, and he was like what, in his 50s? Like he wasn't 80. But the thing about David was, he was ruddy, handsome, but I think he's the type of, if he were like a football player, how like a lot of football players just in their 50s and 60s don't have it because they've taken a lot of hits and bruises. I think that was kind of how David was. So Joab was the military junta. I think that's definitely one way to put it. He is listed on the 30 mighty men. And Joab took revenge for his brother and could have damaged David.
I mean, he was basically the guy with all the scandal. So
so except for the Absalom stuff, he was, and the Tamar stuff. So he wasn't part of that. So I think Vivek brings up a good point, and he's also trying to run against corruption. At the end of the day, though, I think Vivek's problem is no one sees him as a president.
Or authentic, even though, I mean, again, it's like seeing, the sex worker as, the hoe into a housewife. The sex worker, you don't actually believe all the stuff she's saying, but, it sounds so genuine.
And if you're on YouTube,
but it's an act.
Maybe you're familiar with the Destiny guy. Are you familiar with him?
Vaguely.
Well, apparently, his wife ran off with a Swedish dude after they announced an open relationship, and now they're getting divorced. So,
right?
Or they're going to be getting divorced, but yeah, who could have seen that coming? But anyway, the thing about Vivek is I don't think most people see him as authentic, and I don't think anyone sees him as presidential. Like even the people that love Trump and think that he's the Trump stand-in on stage, which he was not last night. I think,
from an entertainment standpoint, he was, but not from a policy standpoint.
Right. He was not the stand-in for Trump last night, but he was. I thought that was his best performance, but I don't think that best performance is going to get him any votes.
I don't think. I mean, he won the gold medal, but obviously, I don't think it translates to the polls,
and that's why it's not really winning.
Well,
I think Nikki Haley's the objective loser in this debate, and I think it does translate to her losing support. She just got pimp slapped. She didn't hold up to scrutiny. She's a groomer.
I mean, there's no place she won't send people to die in.
And she can't name the 3 oblasts in Ukraine. In eastern Ukraine, I should say. So, actually, let's talk about that now.
Deal in Ukraine. Foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom. I want everybody at home to note that I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine. Now a lot of the neocons are quietly coming along to that position, with the exceptions of Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, who still support this, what I believe is pointless war in Ukraine. And I think those with foreign policy experience, one thing that Joe Biden and Nikki Haley have in common is that neither of them could even state for you 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that they want to send our troops to actually fight for. Look at that. This is what I want people to understand. These people have, I mean, she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are, but she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it. So reject this myth that they've been selling you, that somebody had a cup of coffee stint at the UN and then makes $8 million after, has real foreign policy experience. It takes an outsider to see this through. Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces that she wants to actually fight for. And there's her puppet masters right there, the donors right there that are playing her like the puppet masters.
So that's part 1. I do have a second clip that was on
Now,
this.
there is a lot of truth to what he's saying, just in the general sentiment that politicians make policy that they have zero insight to the, I guess, aftermath of, or the blowback of, or even what they're even legislating. And
I mean, think about all the congressmen that don't know how the internet works.
Yes.
They're complete boomers and maybe even worse than boomers when it comes to technology. They don't know how the internet works. And they don't even know how to tackle legislation.
Yeah, they don't know.
What was that bill like several years ago, like that was going to basically shut down the internet?
Talking about SOPA?
Was it SOPA?
I mean, that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think that was right. Stop SOPA or whatever was a huge issue back in the day. And it's because all these congressmen don't know how the internet works. And I remember Ted Cruz came up and basically was rejecting that. And that was one thing that made him stand out at the time. Rand Paul also. So that was a big deal back in the day. I do believe we have, this is part 2 of that clip.
We just learned something from Chris Christie. We learned 3 things. We learned 3 things right there. First of all, Chris Christie also doesn't know what provinces in eastern Ukraine he actually wants us to fight for. Chris, your version of foreign policy experience was closing a bridge from New Jersey to New York. Yeah. So do everybody a favor. Just walk yourself off that stage, enjoy a nice meal, and get the hell out of this race. When it comes to just...
I like the good fat joke at the end.
I mean, they're too easy to land.
I mean, the bridge thing was nice.
Because that was his scandal, right?
Yeah, and it's the most petty of scandals. I mean, that's literally like something out of a TV show of just how petty politicians operate. And
what exactly was it?
I don't know. Something's out.
It's called Bridgegate, right?
Yeah, something about I guess manipulating construction or something to cause traffic into New York.
Because he wanted to take a highway or whatever.
I don't even remember. It's so petty, the scandal, regardless, even though I don't think nothing ever became of it. But
I think they wanted to impeach him over it or something.
It's so petty, but I just like the pettiness of Vivek just slapping that down. I mean, I would have liked the "don't block traffic" joke if you really want to double up on the foreign policy experiences, blocking traffic on a bridge.
Okay, so he's actually referencing what he did there, because I don't quite remember the nuances of Chris Christie as governor. So I don't think we have a whole lot of Chris Christie clips. So I don't know if I have a clip of Chris Christie simping.
I mean,
but this is right after he was simping.
There is
he's
nothing
defending
worse or sadder than a male feminist.
Yeah, it's pretty funny to watch. Now, Ron DeSantis is a very stoic guy, which I guess some people who are childish and don't really deserve the right to vote see that as off-putting.
I mean, he is literally stepping back. So his body postures. I'm just gonna let these guys.
He was smiling there, like he saw a nice little grimace.
I mean, if anything, he has to hold back.
When Vivek was doing that, he was grimacing there.
It might be, it would be seen as immature,
stoic, kind of guy, and he cracked a smile out of that.
And it would be seen as immature on his part if he were seen giggling at Vivek just laying trowel against.
I mean, but he was laughing there. I thought that was funny. So the whole All Blast thing, and Nikki Haley does give an answer after this, but it's the wrong answer. And this was a high IQ, high risk move by Vivek Ramaswamy to bet that she did not know. And it paid off because she gave a wrong answer because she said Crimea.
Oh, let's also not pretend that she actually has foreign policy experience. 2 years as the UN ambassador is not foreign policy experience.
How much of that 2 years was learning the job, and then how much was offboarding?
You casted votes in the UN. Okay. You basically a legislature that has no legislative authority. Okay. Did you negotiate a treaty? No. Did you? I mean, were you representing America before foreign dignitaries? Not really.
And I said at the time it was a complete downgrade for her to be a UN ambassador when you're the governor of a state
with 2 years left.
I mean, it's kind of ranks up there with Sarah Palin quitting. Yeah, Sarah Palin. There we go. Yeah, that's a throwback. So, with that said, she says Crimea. Crimea is not in eastern Ukraine. I would not consider Crimea part of Ukraine. It's part of Russia, obviously, and has been since 2014. It is not really, I mean, it's not on the front lines right now, but it's not like it's out of the war zone either. But yeah, like I said, I did name like all 5 of the oblasts that Russia has laid claim to. Ukraine has made their part of their war goals. They've made to retake Crimea, but the 5 are Kherson, Zaporizhia, or is it Zaporizhia? I think there's Zaporizhia, the city, and Zaporizhia is the name of the oblast. Donbass, which Donetsk, I believe, at one point in time was the 3rd largest city in Ukraine, and Luhansk, and then Kharkiv is like just to wrap around. But those are the areas, and Nikki Haley made the comment that Russia needed Hamas to attack Israel because otherwise they'd be losing this war right now badly. And it's like, has she been paying attention to the war in
I mean,
Ukraine?
that's her being beholden to the lobbying interests that want to perpetuate the war. So they need to actually say that the war is doing well.
The Ukrainian counteroffensive failed to achieve any meaningful results. That was mostly focused in the Zaporizhia front. The Ukrainians are losing the Battle of Avdiivka right now. That's going to be a major loss for them because that area has been fortified for 9 years. So it's not like that area, they haven't invested a lot in defending that place. And then they already lost Bakhmut earlier this year. And it's not going well for them. They've crossed the Dnieper River into the deeper into the Kherson region, but that land isn't exactly, meaningful or strategic. So what exactly are they doing that's working right now? Because
Making money.
are they, winning this war? They are running out of soldiers to throw into the war. I don't know if you saw that video where the one lady is singing.
Yeah, and the average age of a Ukrainian conscript is like over 40.
And then that's not to include the children that they're, throwing into the war either.
Child soldiers.
Allegedly. So no, they are not winning this war. It's not going well for them, and they don't have the manpower to keep continuing.
So Zelensky,
and they're going to be demographically destroyed from this. And for what?
Zelensky's the new Coney.
Yeah. And for what is Ukraine fighting? So that they can get the Donbass back? And it's not worth it. It's not worth America. It's not worth Ukraine. It's not worth it. But Nikki Haley says they're going to march through Europe. I don't see that happening. The history of Russian military is that they're large and ineffective. That is Russia's military history.
You don't want to fight them.
Right, but they win by scorched earth tactics and withdrawing. Or in the case of Stalingrad, the Germans were better at long distance, so they got up close. They would sneak in, get up close to you, and then attack you because the Germans were longer distance fighters. But anyway, that clip, she got owned. That was a body blow dealt by Vivek. And Vivek is the guy to do that. Because here's something that's sociopathic, but you don't want to be the bearer of bad news. And I think Vivek was being the bearer of bad news. I think Chris Christie was also being the bearer of bad news when he's talking about Trump and his indictments. He's being the bearer of bad news because let's just say Chris Christie's right. Now, does telling people that bad news help you out politically? And the answer is no. Even if he's right, it doesn't help your campaign to be the bearer of bad news. And I think Vivek attacking Nikki Haley, similarly, he's being the bearer of bad news by exposing how corrupt she is. And I don't think it'll benefit her campaign, or his campaign, because he's not Trump either. Donald Trump, when he went after Jeb Bush and clowned him, that benefited his campaign. But Jeb Bush was also a puppet candidate. He was a paper candidate that
he
Fox
was
News.
the Koch brother candidate.
Fox News said everyone wants Jeb Bush to be president. It's like, no one wanted Jeb Bush to be president. Stop telling us that we want Jeb Bush to be president.
And Jeb Bush was one of the early quantities as far as candidates. Like, if you're predicting, hey, this guy's going to run in 2016, Jeb Bush was one of the names. Because I did a project in high school on the 16 election and the premise was just name recognition of candidates at the time. And it was Jeb Bush was one of the candidates I selected for the project.
So, yeah, and there was no grassroots support for Jeb! Exclamation point.
Other than his last name.
And that was such a bad selling point. So, like I said, smash the like button to help the stream out. This is our next clip, right? The next clip is
my favorite.
Yes, this is where we talk about replacement theory, not replacement theology, but
I think the real enemy is not Donald Trump. It's not even Joe Biden. It is the deep state that at least Donald Trump attempted to take on. And if you want somebody who's going to speak truth to power, then vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. Why am I the only person on the stage, at least, who can say that January 6th now does look like it was an inside job? That the government lied to us for 20 years about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11? That the Great Replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform. That the 2020 election...
I'm going to pause right there. I've already caught 2 strikes on YouTube for other people saying things. So I'm not going to risk the third.
So let's walk through that one by one. I mean, so
I have 0 active strikes on the channel, by the way, but I'm
the deep state, 100% true, especially with the GOP Congress going after the FBI. Obviously, J6, that's been more or less proven to be an inside job. And, you know, if you're listening to certain witnesses that were inside the Capitol that day, such as Elijah Schaffer, he would say that they were corralling the people into select offices like Nancy Pelosi's office, where there were journalists there for photo ops of the people. So, and that they were using tear gas inside Congress. That would be according to Elijah Schaffer. So we know that they were very prepared. And the 9/11 thing, absolutely true. And if you keep pulling on that string, it leads to some pretty dangerous places. But there is an active 9/11 lawsuit that Vivek has referenced, whereby the victims of 9/11 are actually suing Saudi Arabia as a nation for their involvement. And obviously the Great Replacement, the fact that he dropped that on a national broadcast, that is the moment of the night, of the most significant moment in this particular debate.
Now, one of the other moments was, what are your thoughts? Did you watch on Rumble?
Yes.
Because of course you don't have cable. But neither do I. But
it was on CW. I might have been able to get it, but yeah.
It apparently was on CW, but as a guy, I just don't know what that channel is or where to find it. But with that said, but you know, they do air The Chosen, by the way, thus proving my criticism that they are a CW show. Just saying, I won. Take that, Dallas Jenkins. But anyway, your point on the replacement theory is, you know, spot on.
Now, again,
he's the only one that brings it up, because again, DeSantis kind of brings it up in a different way.
DeSantis kind of pissed me off with how he brought it up. He's just like, you know,
it was brought up in reference to the question that was asked, though.
Yeah, but he's just like, you know, all this immigration in Europe and all you get is anti-Semitism. It's like, really, that's the problem with the mass immigration in Europe.
Like, you know, in Ireland,
why don't you just say that
kids?
Yeah, the stabbings, the assaults, the fact that, you know, they're a compliant populace that allows tyranny because they have zero, you know, dare I say, blood and soil connection to the land that they live upon.
there, you say.
So therefore, they will be very much avenues of tyranny or conduits for a regime.
Yeah.
So yeah, that answer from DeSantis was awful, but Vivek with that answer right there is what DeSantis should have
said.
said.
Have that question lined up though, because here's the thing: where is DeSantis's weakness? It's the boomer cons.
That is true. And
so who does he need to win? The boomer cons.
But his foreign policy was weak all last night as far as whether he would commit troops to both Israel and Taiwan.
So I do have this clip. I'm just using Blaze TV clips because they're in chronological order. His answer on this question wasn't nearly as bad as Nikki Haley's because she just came off as full boomer.
We're harvesting. If they're Zuckerbucks, we're Zuckerbucks. We are.
This isn't actually the clip. Let me actually find the clip. But actually, in the meantime, let's talk about Nikki Haley's big moment. The audio on this is bad.
We really do need to ban TikTok once and for all. And let me tell you why. For every 30 minutes that someone watches TikTok, every day, they become 17% more anti-Semitic, more pro-Hamas based on doing that. We now know that 50% of adults 18 to 25 think that Hamas was warranted in what they did with Israel. That's a problem.
So your thoughts on her statistics?
I mean, she's in, yeah.
She made it up.
Yeah, I don't know what China is using TikTok obviously to indoctrinate our people, but that's mainly because of they want feminism and sexual degeneracy in our culture. They promote that through TikTok, as has been
But look what's happened
at length by libs of TikTok. So the idea that that China wants to use TikTok to make people anti-Semitic just makes me want to beat my head into a wall. And no, they want us to be sexual degenerates, fat, lazy, and addicted to short-term, like the most, I guess, goldfish level content that's ever been created in the history of humanity.
So, Eschew Obfuscation asks, are you both more pro-Trump or pro-DeSantis? And that's a chat for $4.99. Thank you very much. I'm definitely in the pro-DeSantis camp. I don't really necessarily hide that. I mean, I haven't put a banner, endorsing DeSantis on Evangelical Dark Web as a ministry. I don't think I'll do that in the primary unless, maybe things get really bad, who knows? But me personally, absolutely am in the DeSantis camp. I'll let you answer for yourself.
I mean, yeah, I would probably lean DeSantis just on results. I mean, again, I think his foreign policy positions are still a large question mark, and that was re-emphasized last night. Because again, I don't know whether he would commit troops to Taiwan, which again, I'm not willing to die for Taiwan. And obviously he is, I mean, you can be Catholic and dispensational as well. And DeSantis kind of fits that mold. But obviously it's not.
Know. I've met someone who fits that mold way more than DeSantis does.
I'm sure. But at the end of the day, Trump's entire presidency was more or less a failure, except for the Supreme Court justices, which he still picked like the 3 worst Supreme Court justices that would have overturned Roe. That he could have, if you were dissecting possible combinations in the multiverse, then he
my problem with the Trump justices would be he didn't pick the first or second best justice on the Supreme Court. He picked the 3rd, 4th, and 5th best. But on the other side of that, he did get a good farm system for which the next Republican president can pick better judges.
But I mean,
that's undeniable. But
I mean, from an economic standpoint,
Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Barrett are not great justices, and we shouldn't pretend that they are.
But I mean, so yeah, you picked the 3 worst justices that possibly could have overturned Roe. His economic policy was a disaster, and it's first day, last day is the only metric that matters, and that was a drastic disimprovement. I mean, again, his presidency was a failure.
He gave Fauci a medal on one of his last days of office.
So, I mean,
presidential commendation.
I mean, you're really like hoping that Trump will actually just be burn it down, like, vendetta. I wish he was the dictator that, he's been labeled. But
yeah, I wrote an article at the time, like minutes to the Rubicon, because I wanted Trump to cross the Rubicon. I wanted him to be Julius Caesar, but American.
I mean, I think it's
he wasn't.
I think it's Arn McIntyre that says Trump is fishing in the Rubicon.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to say that Elon Musk is skinny dipping in the Rubicon. He doesn't want to cross it, but he'll skinny dip in it.
He's noticing at least a
little
bit sometimes.
So we're still waiting for someone to actually cross the Rubicon. And DeSantis has not crossed the Rubicon just yet.
You didn't like this answer from DeSantis. I didn't think it was that bad. Here we go.
It's not just terrorism, though. That's important. But look what's happened in Europe. You have more anti-Semitism in Germany than at any time since Adolf Hitler. Why? Because they imported mass numbers of people who reject their culture. Europe is committing suicide with the mass migration, and it's illegal and legal. Nikki Haley said the other day there should be no limits on legal immigration, and that corporate CEOs should set the policy on that. There needs to be limits on immigration, and we should not be importing people from cultures that are hostile. So, for example, I said with the Gaza, you had some of the squad wanted to import 300,000 people from the Gaza Strip. I said, no, we're not taking anyone from Gaza because of the anti-Semitism and because they reject American culture. So we've got to get smart about this. We cannot let the United States be like Europe.
So
It's not just...
So the question that preceded that had to do with the issue of anti-Semitism, which, I'll let the pagans and the pagans fight each other. That's my view on that as an issue. I didn't think that was as bad as an answer. The fact that he turned that question into, again, also talking about replacement, also talking about Europe and what mass migration did to them, and how legal immigration isn't just a positive good for a nation without restrictions.
And when you're writing the article about Thomas Massey fighting and representing America first, that's not an American first answer. That's not a, Ireland first answer. Like, again, it goes back to the, Congress is getting viral clips of them confronting the Ivy League presidents, but it's just like, okay, who funded the Ivy League education? Who's the donors that perpetuated the cultural Marxism on the campuses that then turned around and affected a certain group? And at the end of the day, that those students that they're admitting that are the victims of these attacks are not going to even vote for you, and if they're even eligible to vote. So it's like you're helping people that are never going to return the favor.
And you're talking about by trying to wield anti-Semitism as a cudgel
on the college campuses and all that. And again,
I agree. It's not going to win us any votes.
And DeSantis won fighting on critical race theory as an issue.
But here's what he did do there. And he used this as an opportunity to talk about a real issue, which was unchecked legal immigration. That pushed the Overton window. Most Republicans think all legal immigration is good and there shouldn't be a limit just as long as they come in legally.
I mean, Nikki Haley.
Illegal immigrants, if they just came in legally, would be great for this country.
I mean, Nikki Haley is
the mindset of most boomer cons.
I mean, Nikki Haley's backed by Koch, who is the embodiment of cheap foreign labor.
Yes.
Like even was Adam McKay with The Campaign with Will Ferrell, and that movie had the Mach brothers, which were the parody of the Koch brothers.
Right. Ironically, they had a stolen election in that movie.
And they wanted to import
using
cheap
voting
Chinese,
machines.
And they want to import cheap Chinese labor and have made in America. But it was like a town in China called America.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was an interesting movie. It's like, wow, this same guy is just... He made an overtly conservative movie that tried to go after, what was it, that Hillary Clinton court case? Citizens United versus Hillary Clinton, which was about a documentary about Hillary Clinton. It was an anti-Hillary Clinton documentary that the Supreme Court was absolutely right to say that they could make a documentary about Hillary Clinton, that is free speech. So they were absolutely right about that. And then that has broader application as far as, legal precedent goes.
But
And
that's who
what
Nikki.
exactly.
But that's who Nikki Haley is as a candidate.
Yeah, I mean, she is their horse in that race for sure. So, issue obfuscation doesn't believe that we're supporting the right horse. I get that. I see three paths that DeSantis can become the nominee. One of them is that Trump drops dead. He's old, so just not wishing for that to happen. I just think that's a possibility, not the likeliest possibility, but still. Trump goes to jail. I think that would be number two. If he goes to jail, I think it's game over for his campaign. I think a lot of normies aren't going to vote for a convicted felon. And then number three would be he could just be beaten outright. Trump loses Iowa, and then from there it's a domino effect on a number of other races.
Is Deke disqualified from the ballot on option number 2?
Option number 2, he would be disqualified from the ballot, but there's also a large critical mass of Republicans that want to win. And if they believe that Trump can't win because he's a convicted felon.
Now, again, I'm not going to be passionate about the primary because Maryland's votes doesn't actually count for the Republican primary. It's too late. It's too late in the process.
Is Maryland winner take all? Because I don't remember.
I believe it is. But
Maryland has predicted every winner of the primary.
Yeah, because we're that late. I mean, we
are that late.
We're in May. So the primary is probably going to be over by the time we vote. So no point in getting passionate myself. And again, DeSantis has to win both New Hampshire and Iowa or it's game over.
I don't think that's true because a convicted felony would basically mean that this could get drawn out to the convention floor.
Well, yeah, but he would not have the upper hand on delegates.
I think a lot of delegates could change if they realize that Trump's not going to be on the ballot in a number of states.
But they're not. They are released after the first ballot or whatever. But again, I think DeSantis, it's a domino effect if he doesn't win those first two. He will lose South Carolina and pretty much everything.
I don't know if he has to win New Hampshire.
I would say he does.
But I think Iowa's a must win. Or at least you've got to come in within 2 points or something.
No, you got to actually win. You got to win definitively with some knockdowns on the scorecard. It can't just be you beat Trump by 1 point in Iowa. That's a fluke. It's not that's like, yeah, you won the title fight, but you're going to really need a rematch.
I think Charles says it here. The women of both sexes will not vote for a convicted felon, regardless of whether the charges against him are legitimate. The 19th Amendment was a mistake. Now,
joke's on you. Joke's on you. They might fornicate with said convicted felon, but they won't vote for him.
They might.
They'll have his baby. They'll be his baby mama.
So I think there's a large part of that that's true, but who do Republicans need to win? They need to win the people that show up on game day, and the people that show up on game day aren't going to vote for a convicted felon. And I think, the unique Trump voter doesn't show up on game day in off-year elections. And who's to say that they're going to show up on game day in this primary? Who's to say they're going to show up on game day in the general election in 2024? So you see the rural vote is underperforming in the Republican Party. You saw that in 2023. You saw that in 2022, especially states like Pennsylvania. The rurals did not show up.
Well, I mean, I do think Pennsylvania is kind of like a Michigan in terms of their Republican Party. But,
where are the votes being, found in? And that these questions matter. So you didn't like that answer. I thought that was a way to thread the needle that pushed the Overton window on the immigration issue. I thought. So even if you didn't like how he did it.
It's the same. I mean, it's the weakness of DeSantis that he is very beholden to certain interest.
And I think it's because he's trying to, again, he wants to appeal to every part of the Republican Party. It's not necessarily a corporate interest. I'm trying to build a coalition interest, which, that happens. So let's talk about debate winners. And this is New York Times. All right. This gem from the New York Times, your thoughts. They have Chris Christie at first place, and I guess this is an out of 10 ranking, 6.6 points, ranking first. Nikki Haley at 4.9, ranking second. This is dramatically worse than her 6.3 average. Ron DeSantis at third with 4.3, and then Vivek at 4 with 2, which seems to be a higher percent. I don't know. So this is the New York Times saying that despite all odds and perception, Chris Christie won the debate. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably reflective of the New York Times's reader base and audience. I mean, of course they think Nikki Haley, or they think Chris Christie won because he white knighted for Nikki Haley.
And my article this morning, I said the white knight too fat to sit a horse.
Yeah, I like that.
I know. I got it thinking of was it Walter Manderley? Right.
I don't remember, but I understand the reference.
You understand the reference because there's a line in the book about him being too fat to sit a horse. So that's what I was using there. But no way was he the best performer in that debate. This is clearly a liberal.
And obviously, you can see they had Nikki Haley first place in the
previous three debates. Like, what debates were they watching? She is insufferable.
And Mike Pence second place in the first debate.
Mike Pence, really? How does he go from second place to last place? How does that happen? And Asa Hutchinson is last place in the first debate. It ain't bad. Then we have this poll this is the same poll that we've been using for the past 3 debate streams. This is the link to the poll. This is the Washington Post Ipsos poll. Last time I said I didn't like this. I didn't think this poll was very valid or reliable. I will maintain that again this time as well. So you had audience expectations here. And Nikki Haley had slightly higher expectations than Ron DeSantis. Chris Christie had low expectations. And then this on the Y column is how did they do? So no one did very good or excellent. Everyone was just a little above average here or below average. These aren't very reliable. Not very useful for data in general. But I mean,
if anything, it's saying, they performed almost as expected.
Right. So I'm going to pull up the tweet now because this has the numbers on it just so we can understand the percentage. So perform best to worst. So perform best. 30% said Ron DeSantis performed the best. 7% said he did the worst. Nikki Haley, 23% said he did the best. 9% said she did the worst. Chris Christie, 19% said he did the best. 31% said he did the worst. Vivek Ramaswamy, 16% said he did the best. 37% said he did the worst. And then the others are 6 and 4 and then 6 and 11. So this had 2,608 people respond. I don't know what the response rate was. Oh, wait. N equals. How does N equal both 763 and 2608? I don't know. That's two different samples.
Yes, 2 different samples overall.
So I guess this is before the debate, after the debate, follow-up. And it's saying that every candidate except Christie lost favorability. Christie gaining 2 points. I mean, nowhere to go but up, I suppose. But does that really make sense? And then, or net favorables is still Trump plus 29, DeSantis plus 28, Haley plus 21, Ramaswamy minus 6. That's the lowest I've seen his favorables. Christie minus 27. That still seems a bit high. Your thoughts on this poll already?
I mean, it's not what I wouldn't expect, obviously. I mean, again, I would say Ramaswamy performed the best in that debate, but obviously his polarizing grenade lobbing was, it does have blowback on him as a person, his reputation, that he's just a shock jock in a sense, but that's why I think he performed the best. However, again, DeSantis, as far as who is the most presidential on the stage, who's the guy that you would most likely vote for, for who's the best showman, then that's Ramaswamy. If it's who's the best politician on the stage, obviously it would be DeSantis. And again, Nikki Haley is going to have 20% of Republicans that are just communist and no different than the Democrats, but they have an R next to their name.
Yeah. And for years, they controlled the party. I mean, that's the scary part.
It's literally 80-20 rule.
So, except in reverse, right?
Yeah. Well, 20% has 80% of the power.
Now they don't have 80% of the power anymore, except maybe in Congress. The House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate are like the last vestiges of rhino control in the Republican Party. They're losing the governors little by little, but they're still losing them. And then they've pretty much lost the state and state legislatures. And that's where Republicans have really shined in this country, I would say. So when people say the Republican Party is no different than the Democrat Party, the state legislators are the ultimate disproving of that, but they're the farm system for future Congress men and senators, and maybe even presidents. So my thought on that. But yeah, this is Washington Post ISPOS. I don't see how it makes sense that the 30 the best, who are they saying did the worst? Chris Christie?
They might say Haley, but predominantly Chris.
Okay, the 16% of people that said Vivek Ramaswamy did the best. Who are they saying did the worst?
They might predominantly be Nikki Haley did the worst.
Okay, so we still at the end of the day have a 4% discrepancy, which I guess could be made up in the don't know, skipped, or none of these. That's pretty odd that
or
DeSantis Vivek, because they were a tag team on the debate stage. That adds up to 46%, but the Christie Haley only adds up to 40, so that's like a 6-point discrepancy. And then on the flip side, the Haley Chris Christie 23 plus is 42. And then DeSantis only has 7 and then 37. So that almost adds up exactly. So are just the DeSantis voters that nice in this poll that they didn't say Nikki Haley did the worst? Because I don't see how that would basically be, 1 in 4, right? Of the DeSantis Vivek Ramaswamy didn't have an opinion on who did the worst in this debate. That doesn't make sense to me. Because the answer would be Chris Christie because I hate him the most, or Nikki Haley because I think she objectively did the worst on that stage last night. No one had any expectations for Chris Christie. He was kind of just there being a white knight simp. So something's fishy about this poll just based on that result. I think this poll is cushioning Nikki Haley.
Well, I mean, they've all been doing that lately. So that's been the trend for Washington Post and whoever else you've been using for the last couple of streams is very much a rhino fest as far as the polling data goes.
Right. So that is about it as far as the polls go. Actually, I do believe I had one other clip from the debate that I didn't share. And This is actually one of the most important clips when it talks about the issue of Nikki Haley, or the topic thereof.
That's a sign.
No, I don't have the sign clip. So we're going to go all the way back here. This is Nikki Haley when she launched her campaign.
Republicans try to play the... I've preached this to the left, but it's even worse when Republicans try to play the same game. We're talking about that trans issue. And Nikki Haley's campaign launch video sounded like a woke Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light ad talking about how she would kick in heels. At the first debate, she said that only a woman can get this job done. That's what she said. After the third debate, when I criticized Ronna McDaniel after 5 failed years of leadership of this party and criticized Nikki for her corrupt foreign dealings as a military contractor, she said that I have a woman problem. Nikki, I don't have a woman problem. You have a corruption problem. And I think that that's what people need to know. Nikki is corrupt.
Okay.
This is a woman who will send your kids to die so she can buy a bigger house. This is the problem. Using identity politics more effectively than Kamala Harris is a form of intellectual fraud. And it actually needs to end. There's our donor puppet masters wielding their puppet right up here tonight. This is how this game is played. The puppet masters put up their puppet, and I reject the use of identity politics in this party. It has been a cancer coming from the left, and I'm sick and tired of the double standards. The people of this country are too. Having 2 X chromosomes does not immunize you from criticism.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Governor Haley.
Again, clips like this were why I was very pleased with Ramaswamy's performance overall. I mean, again, I'm not even sure I fully agree with everything he says, but yeah, Nikki Haley's pretty much played the
Okay.
I
was definitely
vagina.
wrong about that not being the clip with the sign. But
I mean, she's been I have a vagina, so therefore I'm qualified this entire campaign.
she is the most woke candidate in the race.
Growing up brown in a black and white world. And my heels are ammunition, whatever that means. So I mean, it's been constant.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically your entire campaign.
Now, again, I disagree with I mean, I think all politics is identity politics and all politics is tribal. So I don't necessarily, the problem is that the Republicans don't want to appeal to the identities that make up their party and that actually vote for them. They want to appeal to the big tent and acquire more people instead of just acknowledging that, hey, if politics is identitarian in nature, you must appeal to the voters who will actually vote for you, which would be the working class, the middle class, parents, because married people vote Republican. And that's what DeSantis proved in Florida is you can appeal to, parents, families, and win their vote. That if you're fighting for better schools that aren't grooming their children, that wins votes.
Right, and the votes that Republicans need to win are the independents. And it's also, you need to not alienate people that should be voting for you. So basically white people.
Yes, and that's an identity.
Yes, it is an identity group. So
and again, who did Trump lose? He lost white men and white women.
He lost so many whites
between 2016 and 2020. And, he wanted to win black voters. And, you would have had, and again, I said it before, he would have had to have dropped hard R's in order to perform worse with black women. Like, he got 5%. Like, you can't do worse than 5%, can you? Unless you try. And again, if you also appeal to men, then that will have a trickle-down effect into, Hispanic men and black men. So yeah, you have to be identitarian in your approach.
So I'm going to find the clip. Actually, I think I have it right here. So here's the clip.
How hypocritical Ron continues to be. When he was running for governor and they asked him about that, he said he didn't think bathroom bills were a good use of his time. You can go look that up.
I signed a bathroom bill in Florida, so that's obviously not true.
So the idea that you would say that I was
signed
against
it, you
that.
didn't. You killed it, I signed it. I
We
stood up
didn't.
for little girls, you didn't do it. And there was this going on. I was actually just in South Carolina. Some of the legislators told me at the time there were boys going into the girls. That's the
There
whole
were
reason
not.
why they
No,
did
no,
it.
no, no, no.
And so they say when she does that explanation that doesn't hold water. And this is the upstate of South Carolina.
Ron.
I signed the bill. I
Do
protected
you
the
know
girls.
South Carolinians?
She did not do
you
it.
know
I
South
know that.
Carolinians? Because South Carolina, and this shows how.
So she tries to say at the end that South Carolinians are so tough, they would never let male perverts into women's bathrooms. Now, that is some fake news. They elect Lindsey Graham for crying out loud.
I mean, the problem is she didn't have a receipt with her about whatever DeSantis said in 2018. So I don't actually know what she's talking about. And again, she's not the one she's the one with the viral clip circulating that day going into the debate, not Ron.
I mean, in 2018, this was not a popular issue, but it's not popular because Republicans just caved on this issue. And it's a shame that they caved on this issue so much, but...
Yeah, I mean, literally, if you go back to 2018, you had like
2016, 2017, they had the bathroom bill in North Carolina.
You had, obviously, I think Christy
Mike Pence bowing down to the gays in Indiana. So we have a lot of this. But that was a body blow to Nikki Haley. She got called out for basically supporting transgenderism because she does. We already did a video on that on Evangelical Dark Web, and DeSantis basically went with what I did in the video, which I'm not original for that. I mean, his campaign's messaging has already been on that issue, basically painting her as a groomer, which she is. She supports child abuse, and there's no real ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's what she believes. And that's why she's no better than a Democrat here. So my thoughts on that. I'm going to find the Megyn Kelly, Chris Christie clip. See, there's so many more clips from this debate than the previous debates.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a great clip from Vivek again. You're Indian, but you can't even pronounce my name properly. I liked how he just threw that in her face.
So this is also from Benny. I really should be saying his name better because Vivek is how it's pronounced, but not. I keep saying Vivek, but I'm not overly. I at least know I'm doing it wrong. And continue to do it anyway. So does that make me worse?
I mean, he didn't get his name shortened to Rami when he came into America. So
this is the Chris Christie part.
He said that you got into this race just to stop President Trump.
Oh wait, no, that's not it. So that's where he was about getting in for Trump. I'm trying to think, where was the... So Megyn Kelly wanted to ask Chris Christie this question. So I think this is our clip right here.
Transgender students. You talk about parental rights. Let's talk about them. When you were governor in 2017, you signed a law that required new guidelines for schools dealing with transgender students. Those guidelines required schools to accept a child's preferred gender identity, even if the minor's parents objected.
Not true.
And it said that there is no duty for schools to notify parents if their son or daughter changes their gender identity, allowing this serious issue to remain a secret between the school and a child. How is any of that pro-parental rights?
By the way, that's simply not true.
You're doing what you accuse me of, Chris, and it's absolutely true.
That's simply not true. That's simply not true. That law was put into effect in 2018 and regulated in 2018 after I was out of office,
the guidelines.
Megyn. No, we did not, Megyn. We did not issue those guidelines, and you're wrong about that. Simply wrong. I have stood up each and every time.
So I think if this is one issue that's disqualifying, it's this one.
I stood up.
So here's some more context. Chris Christie also signed legislation that banned change therapy. So he's a groomer.
Yeah, and when he was governor, would have been a time when especially the change therapy stuff would have been big. Now, again, living in a blue state with a rhino governor, supermajority legislature. Guess what? Maryland signed those exact same laws under
Larry Hogan supports grooming as well. And guess who News Nation had on a panel?
They had Hogan?
They had Larry Hogan. Along with Mark Sanford who's a liberal that ran against Trump in 2020 in the primary. If you recall that, Trump ran against Mark Sanford and Joe Walsh.
I mean, the Walsh guy sounds familiar, but
yeah, in 2016, he basically said, if Trump doesn't win, grab your muskets. And then in 2020, he's running against him because he went super liberal.
Yeah, I mean,
life comes at you fast, right?
Rhino governor in blue state signs laws on transgenders.
Yeah.
And again,
same thing.
Larry Hogan's law was like a school mental health thing, which would have had the same provisions that, that school guidance counselors don't need to inform parents, that they can essentially give mental health services without parental consent and or informed. So
more of the clip.
Every single time for parents to be able to make the decisions for their minor children.
But parents...
Every single time, parents should make those decisions. And by the way, you know what? Every once in a while, parents are going to make decisions that we disagree with. But the minute you start to take those rights away from parents, you don't know that slippery slope, what rights are going to be taken away next, and what's going to be focused on you.
As a parent, you do not have the right to abuse your kids. This is cutting off their genitals. This is mutilating these minors. These are irreversible procedures, and this is something that other countries in Europe, like Sweden, once they started doing it, they saw it did incalculable damage. They've shut it down. I signed legislation in Florida banning the mutilation of minors because it is wrong. We cannot allow this to happen in this country. And I know Chris disagrees with me, and I think he has an honest position. Nikki disagrees with me. She opposes the bill that we did to ban that. She said the law shouldn't get involved with it. You said the law shouldn't get involved with it. She also, though, I think...
That's a very subtle way of calling her a liar there. Chris
is
honest about disagreeing with me. Nikki Haley's not. Is what he said there.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it's just like that's an honest position. I don't like. I thought that,
he contrasted Chris Christie with Nikki Haley there. He's like, Chris Christie at least is honest about disagreeing with me. Nikki Haley's not, but he's absolutely right. The facts absolutely demonstrate that Nikki Haley's lying here. Did that video yesterday.
This flows from what she did as governor of South Carolina. They had a bill to try to say that men shouldn't go into girls' bathrooms. And she killed that bill, and she bragged that she killed that bill. Even to this day, she bragged that. I don't think men should be going into little girls' bathrooms. I think it's wrong, and I think we have every right to protect them from that.
So that preceded the previous clip, but I think that's all the clips that I really want to show.
It is DeSantis' standout moment of the night.
And to me, I think the transgender issue is huge because if we can't, that's reality on the line there. I understand like replacement theory is a huge issue, which again, he did touch on that. But if we lose on transgenderism, if the Republican Party keeps it and embraces transgenderism, it's basically game over for us. We haven't quite crossed that threshold yet, and we're pushing back against the threshold right now. Hopefully we can go from protecting children to protecting adults and, recognizing that you don't have the right to, doctors.
No, it's at the end of the day.
If a doctor does that, they're harming patients.
Yeah, at the end of the day,
be allowed to do that.
Actually, medicine. Doctors practicing medicine is one thing. Doctors practicing grotesquerie is a different thing.
Right. And that's why it should be illegal. So
we don't practice feet binding in America or, a bunch of other. We don't make eunuchs or other
female genital mutilation.
Yeah, we don't practice that for good reason.
Doesn't matter if a doctor does it or not. No, we don't do that here. And the same has to be the case for transgenderism in the future, if not in the present. But if that's if we have to do a smash mouth incremental approach to get this outcome, so be it. But doing no harm is exactly the standard for medical care. So that's the point that Republicans need to argue more. But I get protecting children is probably the argument that wins votes more. So that is basically the rundown of the debate. Anything else on the primary race that you think needs to be brought up?
I mean, I would have liked the discussion on Taiwan to not be as war hawkish. I mean, again, I don't think China is actually going to invade Taiwan. I just think China doesn't need to
China
invade what.
bluffing.
China doesn't need to invade what they think is already theirs. And let's be honest, why go to war when you can just buy them for a much cheaper price? And you could just subvert their democracy. And let's be honest, if you just ran ads in Taiwan talking about America bringing gay marriage to the Taiwanese, then China can win the war for the price of an ad campaign.
Yeah, I think that's a valid criticism or
So,
a valid point. I would like to point out, when was the last time China fought a war and won?
I mean,
Their
stood off
civil war.
They stood off the Soviets.
The Maoists, no, the nationalists are. See, the Chinese fell, or the Japanese fell to the Soviets. They were getting just steamrolled in mainland China.
Well, no, but they had a border dispute with the Soviets, so which was why Nixon opening China, made geopolitical sense in 1972.
But they didn't. They had a border dispute, but did that break out into a war in which they got
No,
steamrolled or did steamroll?
It didn't do anything like that. And obviously, you might be able to say that they, by proxy, won Vietnam.
Right. So they've participated in a proxy war. They also fought in the Korean War.
Yeah, they lost.
But they didn't necessarily win that.
Oh, I mean, they lost more soldiers than any other country in that war.
I mean, so did Russia in World War I and II.
And Mao lost his son. Fun fact.
So the last war that they fought and won was the Chinese Civil War, in which the Maoists won, but still, they lost to Vietnam. So did they try to take over Vietnam and it didn't work? Man, when has that ever been done before? Oh, the Mongols and other entities try to go down there and it just doesn't work out too well.
Again, I think the idea of the whole.
But as I was going to say on that point, Taiwan exists because China didn't finish off the nationalists. The communists didn't finish off the nationalists in the Chinese Civil War. That's why Taiwan exists. That is where the nationalists fled to, similar to the Ming Dynasty. They fled to Taiwan basically to operate in exile. So,
but I mean, again, it did seem like all the candidates were kind of ignorant on that point. I don't understand why defending Taiwan is of any, value to America other than cheap stuff that comes from Taiwan that we, in theory, could make in America, but we're too lazy to, or the government doesn't want it, or we shipped those jobs overseas decades ago. And,
as someone who wishes that America was the empire we're accused of being, because, the British Empire was pretty based back in the day. But as someone who, I wish we were what we were accused of being, but I don't view us invading Afghanistan as imperialism. It's the opposite. Because, under imperialism, you're actually controlling that nation. You're not sacrificing resources and then letting those resources go to China. The natural resources in Afghanistan are under Chinese control and influence. So that's not imperialism. Christian nationalism is really just a stepping stone to Christian imperialism, right? And taking the Great Commission elsewhere. And that's what happened in history with the British Empire and even America up to a certain point. But so in that with respect to framing the issue that way, the Pacific, America has always wanted to dominate the Pacific, and I believe America should dominate the Pacific. What exactly that looks like with Taiwan, I'm not entirely sure. But I am much more on board with defending Taiwan because we, in part, got into World War II because of our defense of the Chinese nationalist. That America was always a friend of the Chinese nationalist. And then after World War II, in the end of World War II, we abandoned them to the Maoist. We didn't help out our ally. So, and then Korea happened as a direct consequence of that. And which is why one of the reasons we went into Korea was to make up for our mistake in not helping out the Chinese.
I mean,
So
I just think that the landscape is drastically changed. So, I mean, again, India. I mean, we've kind of that. We're never gonna land the Indian bride, so to speak. She's never gonna say yes because she's in bed with the BRICS. I mean, obviously, I don't think China thinks they need to fight a war to win Taiwan. Again, they're very long term oriented versus Americans only thinking about the next election cycle. So again, I don't think the Chinese are going to fight a war for what they don't think they need to fight a war for.
yeah, I mean, I don't trust the Chinese military prowess, and I'm not familiar with the Chinese war doctrine is. Like the Japanese, they had a war doctrine. Like the Japanese did not attack merchant ships, which was pretty stupid. They weren't big on doing that. America was, the Germans were, but the Japanese were not big on doing that. They sunk under I think they sunk under 300 merchant ships in World War II. That's very low, all things considered. And what they wanted to do was get the navies to engage in a decisive battle and win that battle. That happened in Midway. It didn't work out for them. But, and Formosa and Black Bear might be getting to my point that they're a paper tiger. I think that is also true.
I mean, I do agree with that general point.
They have a demographical nightmare on their way as a result of the one-child policy. So their window to strike is closing, I would argue. Because they don't have it. But then again, what better way to even out your man to woman population than sending men off to die, if you want to be cynical about it. But their birth rates also collapsed as well. So there's a lot. So I don't know what the Chinese war doctrine would be because, again, when was the last time they fought in a war successfully? Throwing mass amounts of numbers. That seems to be the video games. The video games have an understanding that China will just throw a massive amount of numbers at it. And yes, they do have nuclear weapons, but, so does Russia, but they didn't resort to using them yet. And neither, I don't know how willing they'd be to use nuclear weapons for Taiwan. I don't think they'd do it for that. I think a lot of nations see nuclear weapons as a last resort if they're losing a war, not if they haven't successfully acquired an offensive territorial land grab. My opinion on that.
Yeah, I don't know how it translates on a debate stage saying I don't think China has the cojones to invade Taiwan, nor is it in their interest. But again, like everyone wants to project strength and saying I will defend it. It's just like no, we all either which means they're either going to be war hawking on China, or war hawking for Taiwan against China, which again I don't think is the right call. But again, I don't think they understand the landscape where China is probably not is if they're the paper tiger, we're saying they're probably not going to actually invade. And again, I don't think that they need to. Because again, if you have like a 50-year plan and you wait, how many years to get Hong Kong? Why not wait 10, 20 years to get Taiwan?
And another good point is, Taiwan could strike coastal and dams, and China would go back to the Dark Ages, which I guess is a good reference to their bad military infrastructure. So,
but again, would Taiwan ever want to do that?
I don't think Taiwan necessarily has the balls either.
Well, I
question their balls too.
It's not testicular fortitude that's the question. It's actually their desire. Because again, how much of their government is in bed with the CCP?
Yeah, that's a fair question. Especially since last night they're referencing gun control legislation in Taiwan.
Yeah, I mean, that was ridiculous. That was a ridiculous question.
So, anyway, last call for questions. I'm going to plug evangelicaldarkweb.org/join. That's where you can go to support our Patreon-like system. Patreon. We use Patreon because we don't use Patreon. We built our own, and because they censor and we don't want censorship, we're trying to disentangle from big tech as much as we can. So that is a good place you can go to support our work. And it also helps keeps the lights on around here. Streaming software isn't free these days. Neither is running a website, a ministry. But more than that, we do also have a upcoming book, Winning Not Winsome. And if you're a Zealot class subscriber, you can get a free copy. But that is something you're going to want to look forward to. Other than that, don't forget to smash the like button on your way out and subscribe if you are new. Have a blessed day, and we will catch you on the next one.